You're scrolling your phone when you should be working. Your boss sends a slightly critical email and you want to fire back immediately. Someone cuts you off in traffic and your blood boils instantly. What if I told you that a Roman emperor, writing by candlelight 1800 years ago, discovered the exact solution to this problem? And modern neuroscience just proved he was right. Welcome to the modern sages. Ancient wisdom, modern application. Today, the story of how feelings hijack your brain, what a 30-second pause can do about it, and your 2-minute practice to try tonight. Picture this. It's 177 AD. Marcus Aurelius sits in his tent on the Germanic frontier. He's not just any Roman. He's the most powerful man in the world, commanding legions that span from Britain to the Euphrates. But tonight, he's writing in his personal journal about his biggest enemy. Not the Germanic tribes outside his tent, not political rivals back in Rome. His biggest enemy is his own immediate reactions. You have power over your mind, not outside events, he writes. Realize this, and you will find strength. But Marcus wasn't just philosophizing. He was solving a practical problem that destroys careers, relationships, and dreams every single day. See, Marcus had discovered something that modern neuroscience would later prove. Every emotion creates a 90-second chemical surge in your body. 90 seconds. That's it. After that, any lingering anger, frustration, or anxiety isn't biology. It's choice. You're choosing to re-trigger the loop with your thoughts. But here's what makes this story fascinating. Marcus wasn't the first to figure this out. A century earlier, a former slave named Epictetus had taught the same principle to Roman aristocrats. Between stimulus and response, Epictetus would say, lies a space. In that space lies our freedom. Think about what this meant for a slave who became one of history's most influential teachers. Epictetus couldn't control his circumstances, his master, or even his own body. He walked with a permanent limp. But he could control that gap, that pause, that breath between what happened to him and how he chose to respond. Fast forward to the 20th century. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist surviving in Auschwitz, rediscovered this same principle under the most extreme conditions imaginable. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, he wrote. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. But then, everything changed when modern psychology tried to explain self-control. For decades, researchers like Roy Baumeister told us willpower worked like a muscle. Use it too much, and it gets depleted. This ego depletion model dominated psychology textbooks. It explained why you could resist donuts all day, but cave and order pizza at night. Why you could stay focused at work, but couldn't handle your kid's homework battle when you got home. There was just one problem. People with the highest self-control weren't using more willpower. They were using less. Here's where the story gets interesting. When researchers studied people who seemed to have iron will, the ones who never seemed tempted, never seemed to struggle, they discovered something shocking. These people weren't winning through effortful resistance. They were bypassing temptation entirely. They were using that ancient gap Epictetus and Marcus had written about. In 2019, a breakthrough study tested this with smokers. One group got traditional willpower training. Resist the urge. Distract yourself. Think about lung cancer. The other group learned something ridiculously simple. Count backward from 30 before using your lighter. 30 seconds. That's it. The counting group cut their cigarette consumption dramatically. Not through willpower, through a pause. But wait, it gets better. Remember that 90-second rule? Researchers tested this too. They had people recall intensely emotional memories while monitoring their brain chemistry. Sure enough, the initial flood of stress hormones peaked and faded within 90 seconds. But here's the kicker. People who stayed upset weren't experiencing new emotions. They were recreating the same emotion through their thoughts. Picture Zara, a COO at a tech company. She's in a meeting on the 39th floor when two directors start screaming at each other over a missed deadline. She feels her own anger rising, the familiar heat, the urge to jump in and take sides. But instead of reacting, she does something her grandfather taught her from his meditation practice. She counts to 90. She watches her body's chemical storm rise and fall. By second 91, her physiology had reset. The directors were still yelling, but Zara was calm. She could think clearly, respond strategically, actually solve the problem instead of escalating it. This isn't just emotional regulation. This is practical power. But here's what's really fascinating about high self-control people. They don't just use pauses. They build systems that make the right choices automatic. They don't keep junk food in the house. They put their gym clothes next to their bed. They turn off notifications during deep work. In a massive study of 2,274 people, researchers found that self-control doesn't work through constant resistance. It works through habit formation. People with strong self-control had stronger habits for exercise, sleep, and healthy eating. These habits did the work, so willpower didn't have to. It's exactly what Marcus Aurelius was doing with his evening journaling, what Epictetus was doing with his daily philosophical reflection. They weren't relying on in-the-moment willpower. They were building systems that made wisdom automatic. And here's what's fascinating. James Clear discovered the exact same principle 1,800 years later. In Atomic Habits, Clear writes about the power of implementation intentions, pre-deciding how you'll respond to specific triggers. When X happens, I will do Y. It's the modern version of that Stoic gap. This isn't just ancient philosophy. It's backed by cutting-edge neuroscience. When you pause, even for 30 seconds, you activate your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for long-term thinking. You literally shift from reactive mode to intentional mode. Clear found that successful habit change rarely happens through willpower alone. It happens through environment design, through pauses, through systems that make the right choice easier than the wrong one. Now for the 2-minute practice. Right now, identify your biggest emotional trigger, the thing that makes you react instantly. Maybe it's work emails after hours. Maybe it's your teenager's eye roll. Maybe it's that one person who always seems to push your buttons. Open your notes app or grab a piece of paper. Write this down. My trigger is, before I react, I will count to 30 and take one breath. That's it. Next time that trigger hits, don't try to suppress the feeling. Feel it fully, but count to 30 before you respond. Watch what happens. The Stoics called this the discipline of desire. Modern psychology calls it response flexibility. I call it freedom. Do this now. It takes 30 seconds to write, but it could change how you handle every difficult moment for the rest of your life. Here's the principle in one line. You can't control your first emotion, but you always control your second action. Here's what to try. Identify your trigger and commit to the 30-second pause before responding. Now I'm curious, what's your biggest emotional trigger? Work stress or family dynamics? Drop your answer like this. My trigger. My 30-second plan. If you want more ancient wisdom with modern application, subscribe. We post weekly.